FTX is having one heck of a year, recently raising a meme-friendly $420 million from 69 investors at a $25 billion valuation, following a $900 million raise over the summer. The Bahamas-based crypto exchange is striking sponsorship deals, naming rights, and spokesperson deals with the MLB, NBA, as well as the NFL, and their U.S. arm has just finalized their acquisition of crypto derivatives firm LedgerX. Joining us now is the man behind it all, an ever-expanding crypto empire, FTX CEO Sam Bankman-Fried. Hey there, Sam. So $900 million wasn't enough for you, huh? What are you going to do with this extra $420 million?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is that there are a lot of potential acquisitions for us to be making. And I think, LedgerX was sort of the start of that, but I don't think it's going to be the end of it. And look, there are a lot of countries out there. There are a lot of markets that we're looking to break into. And so I think that's going to be probably the biggest use of funds. But, separately from that, we're also looking to just continue making a lot of partnerships, a lot of allies, firms to work with.
I also noticed you just most recently inked a deal with Red Sox legend Big Papi David Ortiz to be an ambassador for FTX. You have a very nice background there. It looks very sunny in the Bahamas. At times I've seen Antigua on the press news releases for FTX, but now you're in the Bahamas. Tell me why the Bahamas?
Yeah, there's a few things that came together for it. I think the biggest is that they rolled out comprehensive cryptocurrency regulation licensing, which is super exciting. And, we are regulated under the DARE Act here. And it's one of the few countries that has a comprehensive regime. So, we've been really excited about that. Outside of that, it's a nice place to be. We've been really excited at the residents that we've been able to bring onto the team. And, crucially, no quarantine to get in and out of the country, which was not 5 years ago what I thought would be determining where an office should be. But that's where we find ourselves.
All right, Sam, tell the truth. I mean, you hanging out with Giancarlo Devicini, and is he making risotto for you? And that Inspector Gadget guy. After reading that Bloomberg article, that sounds like an awesome life those guys have. Do you get to hang out there?
I would love to try his risotto. I actually haven't run into him in the Bahamas, but I might. I would not shock me if I did at some point. And I do think there's going to be an increasing number of crypto firms here.
So, in all seriousness, is your goal with LedgerX to go after Deribit? Is that your end goal? Is to knock them off their perch?
So I think it's a little bit different because with Deribit, they're servicing the non-US clientele right now, and we're already able to operate in a number of non-US countries, and we're getting licensing for further ones, as we go. I think the biggest thing with LedgerX is looking at the U.S. marketplace. And, that's a place where no crypto derivatives exchanges operate right now. And, we would be really excited, to work with the CFTC on being the first one there. And so I think it might be a similar product base, but it would be for a different client base.
Sam, we sort of talked about this in the beginning, but let's just kind of some real talk here. Is there such thing as too much money, raising too much money? I think there sometimes can be, right? There are some benefits to staying lean. So I guess it really does why do you need this much money? You guys have been very lean so far. That's been a great thing. A lot can go wrong actually when you have too much cash. So, can you just talk a little bit about what some of the dangers are here, some of the challenges? Because right now we're just in this sort of mania where everyone's like, oh, I just raised $1 trillion. And it would just be good to just be a little bit more kind of real about this.
Yeah, so I think there's basically two big dangers. The first, which I think doesn't super apply to us right now, but could if we went sort of too big on this, is just diluting the company so much, ownership wise, that the people who are running it no longer are the people who are incentivized. And I don't think we're anywhere close to that with these, but I think that is a real risk, and it's something we see a lot of companies doing. The second, which I think is a bigger risk for us, is just becoming distracted, right? And you should be doing your job, trying to grow the company, and instead you're just growing its balance sheet way bigger than it has any need to grow. and that it just becomes like a giant distraction, you know, and that's not what matters in the end. That being said, I think that the amount of money that we may spend on acquisitions over the next year or so might be quite large. I think that I would not be surprised if it was north of $1 billion.
What's next on your acquisition wish list?
Yeah, so you know, a lot of this is looking at localized crypto partners or exchanges, right? So you know, I mean, there's sort of LedgerX in the United States, but there are equivalents in a lot of other jurisdictions, and you know, looking at what it would mean to acquire, you know, or partner with them, you know, whether it's for you know, their sort of general localization, their relationships, their licensing, you know, user base, fiat on ramps, off ramps. That's something that we're looking at. We're just looking at simultaneously in many countries, and we may end up doing a few of them. And then, you know, the other type would be some, you know, place where, you know, there's some app that has a lot of users but doesn't have the technology to offer them the services that they're looking for. And I think like Blockfolio was sort of a typical example of that.
So Sam, in the meantime, when you get in a funding like this of $400 some odd million, do you deploy that for liquidity on your exchange? There was a transfer of about 400 million Tether shortly after this raise was announced, and so the question is, like, are you guys in the meantime, while you're looking for the acquisitions, is that put to work on the exchange? Is it put to work in the crypto markets elsewhere? What do you do while you're waiting?
So I think that's a coincidence. I think this 400 million is actually still in the bank account. You know, part of the answer, honestly, just sort of sits there as like, you know, a bigger insurance fund for the exchange, and you know, there's some use in that. I think that it's not being put to maybe as good of work as you could imagine it being put to. You know, FTX doesn't trade, and so you know, FTX wouldn't be using this capital to trade, although, you know, if there's sort of enough spare, you could imagine finding ways to monetize that, which I think wouldn't be crazy. But I think the biggest answer is that it's actually doing surprisingly little until it's deployed. But I will say that I think we've deployed more than is public on acquisitions. I think there are some deals that, you know, we've already started funding.
Sam, you're big on Solana. FTX US is launching Solana-based NFTs, but the Solana network failure that happened a couple of weeks ago, is that concerning for you? That wouldn't happen on Algorand, according to critics, and there's concern that it will become more centralized.
So I think that it would be, I mean, a huge concern if that were a common or growing occurrence. I think it's not a common occurrence, and I think it's getting less common over time. I think it's something that could theoretically happen on any network, but in practice, it's much more likely to happen on a newer network because just like fewer edge cases have been resolved. And it's also, frankly, less likely to happen on a network that has lower throughput because you're just stressing all of the systems.
Is there a concern that it becoming more centralized versus more decentralized?
I don't particularly think that would be what it would do unless you saw the response to something like this being like a decrease in the number of validators and being sort of like overhauls of the network where just a central server prevented any bugs or crashing. I don't think that's what we're seeing. I think we're continuing to see, you know, the number of validators grow out. And I think that like there is sort of a fairly healthy and quick sort of response to this, you know, sort of joint response to upgrade. But I think it could point in that direction if this became a really common occurrence that, you know, kind of drastic measures.
Can you personally disclose what your holdings are in Solana along with the entities you control?
I don't want to talk like about specific numbers, but
are you a majority owner?
No. I mean, nowhere close to that. And I'd be shocked if any party were anywhere, you know, close to a majority owner of Solana. I'm not sure if any party is even a double-digit % owner of it. Yeah, it's nothing close to that. And I also don't play an active role in Solana, governance or build out or anything like that. And mostly just passive and a fan and a holder.
So, Sam, touching a little bit on Emily's point earlier about having too much money and kind of being in the spotlight, do you think that that's going to make you a target of regulators and members of Congress to set an example, first of all? And tied into that, of course, we're seeing the rise of stablecoins and the push by regulators to go after those. How do you think it's going to play out over the next couple of weeks when this report comes out on what to do with stablecoins? How do you think they're going to ultimately deal with it?
Yeah, on your first point, that's a real risk. I think that's absolutely something that could happen. And I think it sort of like is yet another reason that we expect to have a lot of eyes on us, and that we are going to need to be as cooperative and compliant as we can be. And I think that sort of is overdetermined at this point. We've been spending a lot of time and attention interfacing with lawmakers and regulators, talking about what potential regimes could look like, writing up some policy pieces on it, and getting every license that we think makes sense for us to get, and it's quite a number of them. But it's a big production, and it has to be one. And I do think that if we half-assed it, I think that there would be real risk associated with that. On the stablecoin question, I'm really curious to see how this turns out. And we've written out a sort of outline of a piece on this on our blog about how one might approach it. But I don't know what the framework is going to look like if one is announced. I don't know how much detail will be announced. And I think it could be quite important for the crypto ecosystem in either direction, sort of depending on what that looks like. I think that what I would be excited to see would be sort of a registration-based regime centered around transparency, disclosure, and protection of assets, which mandated, daily disclosures of exactly what was backing the stablecoin, periodic audits to confirm that, and sort of a few other things, which I think could do a lot to address, a lot of the consumer protection and systematic risk concerns in the space, while still allowing stablecoins to serve as an open, efficient settlement method in crypto and more generally. But we'll see what happens.
And we know that you're a generous political donator, one of the top donors to Biden's presidential campaign. Any big donations lined up for this November?
Probably nothing huge. I never say never. I haven't done as big of a dive as maybe I should have done. But there have been a trickle coming through. I think some of those are public at this point. But I don't think I'm expecting a massive splash in the next.
Can you say which candidates you're supporting or what party?
It could vary, and I think that in general, I'm looking at it much more from the policy side than from the political side, and looking at it from the perspective of which causes, candidates, or anything else I think are going to be moving the world forward and helping to do the right thing by us and by the country.
So not naming any names just yet, Sam.
Not naming names just yet. And
Christine, he's not donating to my school board campaign if that's what you're pushing for.
All right. Well, Lawrence in New Jersey, he's got a school board campaign. Everyone vote for Lawrence.